Well, here I am again in the shop and or recording studio, whatever you want to call it. I guess it's a shop that's kind of become the recording studio. Having a little technical difficulty tonight. And so here I am. It's, well, it's actually about 9 o'clock at night. You know, the days are really nice. It's been really hot, but as long as the sun's shining, I kind of like to be outside if I can. So I'm really late with this. This is like 2 months late, this video. I've been wanting to do these for a while, but summertime's hard for me to sit down and do this kind of stuff. So, but this one's about 2 months late because 2 months ago was Mother's Day, roughly. And, you know, a day or so after Mother's Day, why Peg said to me, she said, do you think about your mom a lot? And I said, well, I think I do. I just don't really, I think about her and I smile about her and I laugh about her and I thank God for her, but it's not like I dwell on it. But then that made me think about, what do I think about when I think about mom? So, my mother was mom to me, and she was always there because she was a farm wife. She was home, and so she was there in the morning and when I left for school, and she was there at night when I got home. She was the one that drove me to town because we were 7 miles from town if I needed to go to school or confirmation or whatever. So, stories I like to tell, a couple kind of humorous. They weren't maybe so humorous at the time, but a couple of humorous ones. And the one I remember, was I had gone to town stayed with my friends, and we went to see Toby Tyler Goes to the Circus or something like that. And of course, about a kid running away and going to the circus. And so I came home the next day, and probably on Saturday, and I had this bright idea that I should be like Toby Tyler and swing on the trapeze, So I got a piece of pipe and I cut it, and I found a rope and I run the rope through it and I tied it up in a tree, and I was swinging on it. Didn't think about the fact that the sharp edges on the pipe were cutting the rope, and I was hanging by my knees, and the pipe finally cut through the rope, fell on my head, and I bit my tongue, and I bit it so bad it was really bleeding bad. And so I'm right out the back door of the house, and the back door, and I had a little porch, and then you came into kind of a pantry area that had a great big old steel farm kitchen sink, and at one time I think it actually had a hand pump in there. Anyway, I come running in, and Mom's in the kitchen, and she sees me, and she comes in, and she has me leaning over the sink, and she's running the water, and you take just a little bit of blood and some water, and it looks bad. Well, when you got this much blood coming, it looked really bad. So I don't know whether I was crying or what I was saying or whatever, but she kept saying to me, now I just went to first aid at Home Bureau, and I know you're not going to bleed to death. Well, that's, I don't know how old I was, 10, 12 years old, 10, 11 years old. That's just what you want to hear. I guess the good news was that I knew Home Bureau, I think, was something either through Farm Bureau or Extension that FarmWise went to, and I don't know what all they discussed there, but anyway, she'd had a first aid course, and so she was quick to inform me that I was not going to bleed to death, and we laughed about it afterwards. But yeah, it was, and of course, you didn't go to the doctor. My tongue swelled up, and a couple days later, I was okay, and you never went to the doctor or anything. But in later years, we laughed about it, and I used to tease her a little bit about telling me that. And then the other one I remember, which again wasn't humorous right at the time, but it was later. Why I had sheep when I was young, and I had a ram, and I had taught him to play El Toro with me and charge a coat. Well, that worked fine, except the ram figured out that you didn't have to have a coat. You could just be a person, and if you turned your back on him and you were close, why, he'd hit you and knock you down. Well, we had a burning barrel at and I used to fence off different parts of the barnyard for the sheep to graze in, and we had a burning barrel at the back of the barnyard, and my mother would take trash out there and garbage and burn it. And so one day, Dad and I we had a barn back there, and we were in the barn working on something. Mom came out with 2 big bags of garbage in her hands, and I don't know whether she didn't think about that she was in the sheep pen because I kept moving the fences around, or whether she just thought, well, he wouldn't bother her. Well, she's walking across that pen, and Dad and I saw the ram coming, but there was nothing we could do, and he hit my mother, and she was a real big woman, and she went up in the air, and the bags of garbage went all over. And it is the only time in my life that I heard my mother swear. And she hit the ground, and of course when the ram would hit you, he'd knock you down, then he'd back up about 3-4 steps and kind of shake his head at you and watch you. And she hit the ground, and she looked at that ram and she said, "God damn ram." And it is the only time I ever heard a bad word come out of my mother's mouth. Well, Dad and I by then we knew she was okay, and we kind of chuckled a little bit. Dad said, "You better go help your mother, but don't you laugh." Well, we didn't tell her that right away, but later years we did. And every time I told her that, she never used the GD again, but she wasn't real complimentary of that ram and what I had done with them. So, I remember those stories, but I think the thoughts that go through my head are more about my mother and what she did on a daily basis. She took, like I said, she was at home, and she always had meals for us, and if anybody was there working with us, she had meals for us. And my mom was never thought twice about helping somebody out. We had a bachelor neighbor that my dad worked back and forth with, and one day he went down there, and this guy's Lyle's bull had knocked him down and pushed him around and beat him up really bad. Lucky he didn't kill him. And my dad brought him home. He's all covered in mud and manure. My dad brings him home. They called a doctor. In those days, doctor would come to the house 7 miles out of town. And while they were waiting for Doc McCabe, they got his clothes off and cleaned him up as best they could. And Doc got there. He had broken ribs and I don't know what all. But, of course, there again, didn't go to the hospital. And my mom took their bed, put Lyle in that bed, and took care of him and nursed him for I don't know how long. I just remember Lyle being in my mom and dad's bed. That's, my mother didn't think twice about doing that. She was always there for dinners, if it was a 4-H dinner or a community dinner or a school dinner or a funeral dinner at the church. She was there. She made huge dinners for when we had shelling days. We have 10, 15 men that she served at dinner at noon. Everybody came in, and it was a huge meal. And I think back, she did that all by herself. She brought us, she used to bring us cookies and iced tea and lemonade when we were in the field baling hay. And how she did that, I don't know, because she brought the iced tea and lemonade in glass pitchers, and brought it out in the car into the field. But she was there for that. In later years, after I was married, and Peg and I had, I think, the two oldest girls, Jen and Lisa, why she started taking care of Cousin Ole. Well, I maybe had heard of Cousin Ole, but I didn't know anything about him. He was like a second cousin to my mother. And he had kind of been, well, he just had distanced himself from the family. Ole Northwaite, old Norwegian. And he'd been a carpenter, and he hadn't been around family, but he was in need of help, lived in a little house in Morris, and had no kids of his own. His wife was dead. And so my mother just started taking care of Cousin Ole, bringing him food, helping him pay his bills. And she used to take Jen and Lisa, whether they still think about Cousin Ole. And so, my mom was just that kind of woman. Cousin Ole hadn't been real popular in the Enerson side of the family because, for some reason, I don't know. And yet, when he had a need, she took care of him. She didn't think twice. And so that's the kind of woman, my mom was. I think about, she used to be a election judge, and it was an old schoolhouse on Jugtown Road. They didn't even have a bathroom, and so the women that worked there on election days took turns going to a neighbor's house to use the bathroom. And people complain about not having enough opportunity to vote today, and I think about, some of the things that my parents did and didn't think twice about it, so they could be part of the election. So my mom was just, I was really blessed to have her. She made sure we went to church. She made sure we went to confirmation. She was always there for people. When my grandmother had a heart attack, she came home and stayed with us. My mom made sure that Grandma always had what she needed, along with her other sisters. But, that was the kind of mother my mother was. And like I said, I'm really blessed to have had good parents, both of them, but especially my mother. I think about her, and I think about, she always said, I hope I don't have to go into home. That was always her big thing. I pray that I don't have to go into home. That was she didn't want to go in a nursing home. Well, God answered her prayers because, she went to bed one night and she was planning a vacation and went to bed. She'd had scarlet fever as a kid and had a heart valve kind of murmur thing, and you'd never know it. She never complained or said anything, but she went to bed that night, just didn't wake up the next morning. And it was hard at the time, but I think back on that, and she had her prayers answered. So she loved Peg, and she loved my brother's wife, Pat. They were her daughters that she hadn't had, and she treated them just like they were had always been part of the family. And so anyway, Peg, I do think about Mom, and she taught me to respect people. She taught me to be nice to people. She taught me that I had to work. She taught me that I was responsible for what I did. And, I couldn't ask for any better letters and better lessons in life. And I'm lucky I had her, and I had her to love me. So anyway, it's 2 months after Mother's Day. So, but it's kind of a message that I think it can be all year round. So I'm doing this story. This is another story from when I was 10. And so we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for listening.